All right, we're going to do a quick audio check, make sure that everything is tight. Oh, good, I'm breathing, which is excellent. Hello and welcome to Adobe XD Tips and Tricks. My name is Dani Beaumont. I'm a product manager, actually new to the XD team, but I've been a product manager at Adobe for an awfully long time. One of my favorite things to do has been to share live sessions on Facebook and YouTube. Right now, I act as the release manager for the XD team, which means that each time we deliver a new release, I come in and deliver new feature videos and a blog post. So in the tips and tricks session, my goal is to make this more of a back and forth conversation. So as I present my session here today, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section here on Facebook. And if you have questions about what I'm covering, I'm going to stop and pick those up from time to time. And if you're not watching the session live or are interested in seeing some of the older sessions that I have done, you can swing over to my to my YouTube channel, where there are XD new feature demos and also some of these recordings. Looks like I've got a couple folks I've known in past lives. Rajesh, welcome aboard. It's great to see you. Ali Pordelli, it's good to see you as well. So with that said, let's switch over to the session. As I mentioned, should be casual sessions. I will make mistakes, I promise. You're welcome to correct me as I go along. But this is how we both learn together. I find it's a great way to familiarize myself with the tool and also share my key learnings. One of the things I think was amazing about XD when I first encountered it is the team that designs it works very hard to make it a tool that doesn't get in your way, that allows you to design at the speed of thought without really having a lot of Chrome, as we put it, a lot of software interface in your way. And just going to double check. Just looking for a thumbs up from Gabrielle. I think we're all good. All right, I'm going to keep going. These live sessions can be a little funny, but given the fact that most of you folks are giving me a thumbs up, I think we're great. All right, perfect. So here we go. As I mentioned, I'm going to cover different workflows. So these aren't going to be just specific new features. They're also probably not going to be projects that some amazing XD designers do. There are create live sessions with each of the new releases, where you'll see a lot of that kind of content. I want to focus on workflow. And for this session, the specific focus is going to be on repeatable design elements. So it's going to start out slow. As I mentioned, I'm new to XD and just learning to explore it myself. But as we go forward with workflow sessions, I'd love if you threw ideas that you have into the comment section here for areas around XD that you'd like to see more about. I have kind of a running topic list that I am going to rely on, but I'd love to hear what you need to hear more of as we go along. So in the world of repeatable design elements, the idea is that as you work with XD, you may know how to do everything you need to, but what you may not have really familiarized yourself with are ways that you can increase your performance and work more quickly. So I wanted to focus on that. What are some of the repeatable design elements that you can reuse in your projects as you organize the content? So I'm going to switch over to XD. And I'm working in a project here. You may have seen this asset. It's called Reel. It's not real. We just call it Reel. But it's also a kind of a movie theme demo asset. And I'm going to also attempt to switch to my XD presentation here. I have basically used XD to create my deck. And I published it to the web as a prototype. And it'll allow me to kind of cue myself as we go along. The beautiful thing about XD is, in some ways, I find it to be about 1 inch deep and 1,000 miles wide. in that we are, and the inches are growing, we'll put it that way. We're adding more and more functionality, but we really believe that experiences come in all different sorts. It may be a presentation, it could be a mobile app, it could be a web interface, it could be an appliance, a piece of hardware. Using XD to express yourself, to test that concept, to get sign off from your stakeholders, as we call it, so your colleagues and your client, is the real intent behind the core of this tool. So when you're beginning to create assets, a site will ordinarily, or the design that you're working on, the experience, will have things like colors, fonts, and symbols. And as you're working, it really depends on how you work. You may like to organize yourself up front and make sure everything is structured well, or you may kind of get to the end and then circle back and try to clean up your work as you proceed. I've definitely met customers of all different sorts. But if I'm here in Adobe XD, I switch over to this place. I'm just going to keep monitoring chat and everybody else. Okay, so if I switch into XD, what you'll notice is that I'm in design mode. I can toggle between design and prototype mode here, and I can zoom out on my content. As you probably know, one of the amazing things about XD is how absolutely agile the application is. It's designed to be very light, very quick, and there's some amazing engineers at Adobe that I work with, and amazing technology that assures that that continues to be true as we add more and more functionality. So in the design I have here, you'll notice that in design mode, I have the layers panel open, and I can toggle that to open and close it in the lower right-hand corner here. There's also an icon above that, and this is for assets. Now, assets can be colors, different character styles or fonts, and then symbols that you're working with. As I mentioned, you never get a second chance for a first impression. It took me quite some time to figure out how to extract assets into my asset panel, so I thought there was some merit to showing that off a little bit. Let's say I'm working and I've already proceeded, pretty significantly in my design. But I want, when I began, I was experimenting, let's say, with colors and fonts, and I wasn't exactly sure where I needed to land. At this point, I can extract any colors or typefaces that I'm using on an individual artboard or all of the artboards using a particular process. So what I want to do is kind of make this a bit simple. I'm going to just click on one artboard. So this individual artboard here, and I can zoom in on it a little bit more. But when I click on it, I've selected that artboard, and with it selected, I'm going to come into the asset panel, and notice the color section here. If I hit the plus sign, what XD does is extract only the colors in that selected set and brings it into the asset panel. Now that I have it here, I can then apply those colors to other objects. Let's say I think that this gray needs to be applied to this vector object here. This is obviously a group of objects, so I'll lightly select it and just come on in and click right on that color swatch to change the color. One thing you may not have understood, we've done some usability studies lately, and we're actually kind of considering a way of changing this experience. Notice that I went in and clicked there to change that color. If I switch over to the tiles, I can click on any color to change that color. Oddly enough, when I come to the list view, though, if I were to click kind of over here, it doesn't really do anything. So when you do click on a color, you want to get right on that swatch. So I can come in and apply that change. Because I've added the color to my assets panel, I can also make changes throughout my design really easily. So if I come into that color and right click and select edit, I can change the color value. So maybe I'll go with a beautiful shade of pink. Notice as I'm making these changes, it's not only changing, let's say, one individual item that I've selected on the right-hand side, it's changing all instances of that color across all of the artboards in my site. I'm going to keep saying site because I'm looking at a website, but it could be any experience design, of course. Now, I did that with colors. You can also do that with text. So let's say I come on into that same artboard and I'm going to click on it. I'll come back over to my assets panel. And here in the character style section, I'm going to hit the plus sign. Now it's extracted, obviously, a whole lot of fonts that I haven't loaded up. So this right-hand side is letting me know that I don't have those typefaces in my current computer as I'm working right now. So one of the things I could do is kind of stop and go add those fonts. I'll show you real quickly how you do that. If I come over to the Creative Cloud, you know what? I'm going to stay mainstream. As I mentioned, these tips and tricks sessions are welcome to meander. It's kind of my goal. And as you ask me questions, I'm happy to step off. But I'm going to behave a little bit for this first session and stay on track. So if you do not have these typefaces loaded, going to the Creative Cloud app, there's a very easy way in the Fonts tab to add those typefaces, and it will update all of those on your system and you won't see the errors there. But even though it's coming up as an error, now that I've added these here, I can right click and come on in, and perhaps there's a typeface I don't want to use. I could go in and switch it to one that I do have on my system. In here, pick something crazy, Oswald Stencil. Notice that I changed it here on the left, and everything on the right changed as well. So any instance across the canvases. All right, so that's kind of tip number one, how to change colors and fonts. The next level up, and again, it's very reflective of how much of an organization person you are, has to do with symbols. So if I scroll down here on the page, or here in my design, you'll notice I have a number of symbols that are already defined here on the left. The way that I did that is if I come on out, let's just zoom out a little bit on my design, and I'm going to come up to just some smaller artboards. Let's try the tablet example of this design. If I zoom all the way in onto the top, don't get dizzy here, I'm going to look around a little bit. This will be fine. I want to work on these two artboards here. And if I hit Y on the keyboard, by the way, that'll give me either Command or Control Y, allows me to expand and contract that panel there on the left. And as I'm working, I can toggle, as I mentioned, between the Assets panel and the Layers panel. But what you'll notice is up here towards the top, I'm simulating basically a mobile design, a tablet design, and a desktop design. And I have kind of classic iOS controls that are here. If you are new to XD, under File here, you can get UI kits. And actually on adobe.com, there's now a tab that we've just added called Resources, and those resources show you all of the kits that have been delivered for XD. You can access some of the basic one here within the application. But what I've got is a series of icons that have been defined here in this area. Now, if I want to make something into a symbol, let's see if I can get in here real quick. I'm going to back out of this a little bit. All right. One of the things that personally, new to XD, I find selection to be a bit challenging. So I'm going to come on in and select these different bars here if I can pull it off. I might go to the Layers panel, get a better sense of what I'm doing. I know. It's sniggly for me. What I just did there is selected one item and then I hit Escape. And I'm going to just kind of delete something that was applied on there. I want it to be in a default state that's a little easier to understand. So I'm going to grab this guy. I'm just going to bring it out a little bit so it's got just its basic parts. All right. Okay. If I can get into these guys. All right. I've selected all three of these lines. They're basically just rectangles with rounded corners. And I want to now go ahead and group those together. So I'm going to group them by hitting Command or Control G. And then I'm going to double click and I'm just going to call it ICO hamburger, because it's known by some folks as a hamburger menu. I have that now, and it's here in my Layers panel. I can copy and paste that to other locations, but if I define it as a symbol, it allows me to have one instance that propagates across many places that I can easily update. So with it selected here, I'm going to come back to my Assets panel and come on over into that symbol section here, and I'm just going to hit the plus sign. What you'll notice, in fact, I'm going to hit undo. If you look towards the right-hand side, I've got just an object that's selected. It's got the blue highlight. When I hit plus on the left, notice that that object changes from having a blue highlight to a green highlight. The green indicator lets me know that it's now a symbol. So as a symbol, there's different things you can do. I tend to forget these off the top of my head, being new. But one thing you can do with a symbol is have multiple instances and change the text on that symbol. I think the second thing you can do is actually change some of the colors associated with that, although I might be lying. Also, when you have symbols, you can change the image that's part of that symbol. But to a large extent, you can have that object, repeat it throughout your design, and make some individual changes. So with this guy now defined as a symbol, I can come in and basically repeat it. So if I drag another instance on the canvas, another instance on the canvas here, if I go back to one of the original instances, so if I come on in and decide, you know, there's a little too much air going on there between my lines, I can come in and make a change to one instance and it'll change all of the symbols on the canvas. So pretty nice in that, to that extent. A few releases back, even though I'm new to the team by about 4 or 5 months, I'm already getting blurry in the head about all the new capabilities that we offer. I think about 2 releases ago, we allowed you to swap symbols. And this is another really powerful feature. I was able to come in and change one instance and it updated the other too. But what if you want to change an icon that's occurring across many artboards all at one go? And it's a very different icon. You can do that now with the swap symbol feature. So I have this guy here. I'm going to actually move this guy out of the way, make my life a little simpler. I've got that symbol that's here, and there's a couple instances. As you know, I've placed them here on the canvas. So I'll go ahead and do that just a few more times. Let's say this is across many artboards and I want to make a change. What I can do is if I have another symbol that's been defined, so notice here's a totally different symbol. It has a different purpose, but let's assume for the moment I wanted to take all of the instances of the symbol on the design canvas and swap it out. What I can do is here in the Assets panel, go ahead and drag this guy out. Notice when I'm dragging it just onto a canvas, onto an artboard, I have a plus sign indicating that. If I drag over an existing symbol, watch how that icon changes. It's incredibly subtle, which is why I'm pointing it out. As I roll over there, that plus sign becomes an arrow. And the arrow is indicating that I can swap the symbol. So if I release now, it updates all instances of the symbol across all of the artboards by just replacing that one first image. Okay, so that's a little bit about symbols. You can nest symbols in groups and work to kind of replace it. As I mentioned, I personally am challenged by selecting objects on the canvas. So if, in my experience, I think if you want the flexibility to be able to replace symbols as you're working, I kind of tend to leave them ungrouped in sets. But that brings me to another nice feature. Let's see if I can stick to my agenda here and switch back a bit. So we talked about symbols, creating them. We talked about, in my opinion, being careful about how you group symbols, and then how you can replace all instances. Another feature is something called Repeat Grid. That I want to talk about, but I was going to say something else about symbols before we jumped off there. Oh, I know. I think it'll be for the next section. So let's focus on Repeat Grid. This was another one that took me a little time. I saw it demoed, thought it was fantastic, and then struggled a little bit to actually implement it. So I am prototyping, as I mentioned, kind of a record company, and we have example concert dates or album covers that I'm focusing on here. The Repeat Grid feature is an amazing way for you to show a grid like a bunch of tile designs, but it's also really powerful to use in other ways that I want to show you just a little bit. So I have some content here. I've got, you'll notice a play button, I've got date and location. I'm going to come on in and group this content. So I'm going to select it and hit Command or Control. Actually, I'm not going to group it. Again, because I have a fear of grouping. I'm going to come in and select all of the content. And what I want to do is repeat this content. So with it selected, I'm going to come to the upper right-hand side here and click Repeat Grid. Checking my watch. I'm having a good time, but we're going to run out of time before you know it. So I'm just going to keep an eye on time. When I went in and clicked on Repeat Grid, let's undo that again for a second. So with the object selected, On the upper right-hand side, I'm going to hit that button, but keep an eye on the objects on the left. When I click that button, notice that 2 green handles appear when this object is now selected. This lets me know that these are repeatable elements. When I press and drag now, I can repeat that item across the canvas, right? I can also drag down and repeat it down, so whichever direction I'm looking for. Now, once I've done that, I may be happy with the gutter or the spacing between those items, or I may not. I can control that by hovering over between these items until I see a pink highlight come up. When I see that, I can just drag to expand the gap in either direction until things start to feel balanced in a way that I'd like it to be. Now that's great. That was a way for me to quickly come in and add lots of repeatable content. But what if I'm prototyping and I want these to be different, to show the reality of different content? Now, when you're prototyping out what's often a back-end CMS, a database that's going to give you dynamic content, it can be really painful to come in and try to drag all that content in. So XD recognizes that and has some tips or tricks for you to be able to repeat content really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and close out my panel here on the left because I don't need it at the moment. And I'm going to go out to my browser. And I think I think I've got a finder here. I think I've got the finder here. I'm just checking chat to make sure everybody's good. And I've got some assets here on the side. So I want to take a look at these guys a little bit. When you're working, you may have a back-end CMS that you're working with. If you can extract your content, I'll give you a look at these here, into images and text files. Let me show you what this text file looks like. If I click on dates, for example, and I hit the space bar on a Mac, it lets me preview the content there. This is a very simple text file, and each of the fields in this text file has been separated with the return key, so it's considered a hard return. But there's date field, date attributes that are there. If I click on places here, you can see that even though there's commas here, it has a city and a country, or a city and a state, or a neighborhood and a city. I can't really tell. But notice that they even have commas included there, but they have a hard return between their fields. We tried to make this feature really straightforward and simple for you to allow you to come in and update this content. So if I go back out to the images area, I've got 6 tiles that are here. I'm going to come in and just grab about 6 images here in the folder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I want to do is drag those over one instance of the image. So any one that's visible here on the artboard, when I release, what happens is it updates all of those images for me. Now that might be good. I may have them beautifully cropped already, but if I need to, I can come on in and double click on any one of those images and change the way the mask is applied. So I might decide to come on in and arrange this image now that I've placed it so that it works better. But I was able to come in and actually come in and update that content. If I wanted to do it with the text work, I'm going to go back out here and go up a level. Maybe not that far. I'll grab the date field, and you'll notice pretty subtly here it says date and location. So if I drag the date text file until I see that I'm highlighting the word date here, when I release, it updates all of the date fields with sample text that I have representing dates. For places, I'm going to come on in and just drag it over location, and it updates all of those. Now, one of the things that I didn't realize until later, get rid of this extra panel there, is that this is a really great way to build out content that may or may not occur as a grid in your design. In this design, it's pretty good to have this repeat grid. I'm simulating scrolling through different panels here. But what if I want to use these in lots of different places in my design? Once I've made all of that repeat grid changes that I want, I can come in and break it apart and reuse it. So once you've done this, you do need to come in and make sure you make all the global changes that you'd like to. But with this repeat grid selected now, I can hit Ungroup Grid, And basically come on in. I probably need to grab all of these elements now, but come on in and move them to other locations. So they don't need to stay in that grid structure that I defined earlier on. Let me show you another way that that can be really fun and interesting, I think. Let's say I come on in and I want to create a menu really fast. I'm going to come in and we'll say this is the about page of a website. And I want to take advantage of that repeat grid feature. I could make this a little more readable. So with it selected, let's go ahead and give it a fill color of white and just dig in a little bit more. And I now want to come on in and make that maybe a little bigger. So here's another tip. I'll tell you, this one killed me for a long time. Notice that this is an aside, but I'm still going to share it. Notice that I clicked the text tool and I typed the word about. Had I gone in and just press and dragged here, the way you might do, and typed in about, I'd get some text. And when I hit escape, it looks pretty good. But when I come in with the selection tool here and I go and resize, it's good, but it's resizing the container. In the instance where I took the text tool and just clicked and released and typed the word about, instead of getting 4 handles, I get 1 handle. But this is a magic handle if you like to visually design. With that little magic handle, when I drag away, it's dynamically resizing the text. If you look to the right, it's changing its point size value, but it does that dynamically. It happened because I took the text tool and clicked and released and typed in about. When I hit escape, I get that single handle. If I press and drag, I just don't get it. So this is where y'all are welcome to come in to chat or to the comment field and be, Dani, we all know this, you just don't. I'm open to that feedback, but I thought that was pretty amazing and subtle once I discovered it. Okay, now that I have the word about set, I'm going to define it as a repeat grid, and I'm going to press and drag, whoops, not rotate, but press and drag to create a menu. I'd like to go ahead and do a menu with 4 fields. Once I've done that, as I mentioned, repeat grids allow you to change the text associated with it. In fact, I'm going to show you a trick here. Let's go ahead and do a 5th. And I can go to the gutter here and control the space between it. And this might be, we've got about, we've got products. Notice that it's not center aligned, so I'm going to hit escape, go up a level. And here in my alignment panel, center my content. So I've got about, products, contact, history, and I don't know. We could say tomatoes, which makes a whole ton of sense. Come on into my repeat grid now and just give myself a little more room and increase the space between my items. Looks like I've made those really small. It's kind of interesting. I think I might have gotten this a little mad. Let's just see. Drag this guy out. And yeah, I got it mad at me. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to delete these guys. I'm going to start with 1. I'm going to make sure that it's centered, which is great. I'm going to set it as a repeat grid. Make it a bit bigger. I'd like about 5 of these. Increase my gap between my items. And let's change the text. This, that, me, and you. So I have this kind of nice dynamic little menu that I'm working with. Well, what if I wanted to make this menu have a logo right here in the center? One thing that I can do is keep this as a repeat grid because it does give me the power of being able to change the typeface in a global way, change other attributes. You're welcome to come on in and just make any one of these empty. So with that empty, exactly. Now that I have the guy set, I'm going to ungroup my grid, come on in and delete that middle guy there. So definitely something to experiment with when you come in and create repeat grids, ungrouping them after you've made all the global changes, then coming in and changing another level deeper on an individual item level. All right, moving right along. Y'all are awfully quiet for chat, but I am going to continue. I want to talk about another feature, which is copy-paste. So as I'm working, we wanted to improve the way copy-paste behavior works. And this is a feature we delivered, I believe, also about 2 or 3 releases ago. And let's see if I can set this up a bit for myself. I'm going to come on in and grab one of my artboards. It's optimized for an iPhone. I'm going to hit Command or Control D, which will duplicate that artboard. And then in order to select an artboard, I do it here in the label or the name up towards the top. And so I've got that iPhone setting there. I'm going to type A on the keyboard, which switches me to this Artboard tool. And I'm going to come in and, let's see, I want to add some other artboards. But I want to go in and bring an iPad artboard in. So I'll add that there. Go back to the V on the keyboard to control, to have the pen tool. And let's do it again. I'm going to type A, and this time I'll go on in and select something pretty silly. We'll go with, nah. Let's see. I want something kind of big. So we'll do a web page that's rather large. All right, so I've got 3 different size elements here. And I can move these guys a little closer to one another. And what I want to do is take this navigation that I've got going on here at the top, and I want to carry it over to my other designs. So obviously, in fact, I'm going to make this even more obvious. I'm going to come in and add one more artboard. So I've got these guys, type A on the keyboard, and I'm going to bring one more iPhone 678. Let's do that. A little bit shorter, but that's fine. So let's say just for speed's sake, I want to take this top navigation elements that I have and carry them over to the other artboards. If I come on into this individual artboard, when I click on the artboard and come to the layers panel, it's going to show me all of the content on that particular artboard. If I hit escape, it's going to step up to all of the artboards, but it does drill down as I click on an individual item to show me the content within it. I want to come in and select this header content here, and I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard. What I'd like to do is apply that to these other artboards in one fell swoop. So to do that, I'm going to come in and select, holding the, let's try Control key here. Let's try Shift. 1, 2, and 3 artboards. So they're all selected. All I need to do right now is just say paste. And when I paste that content, it's going to automatically, actually I obviously selected much more than I meant, but that's okay. It's automatically placing all of the content that I selected in one fell swoop in the same X and Y location. So when the artboard is the same size, it's going to place it right there in the center. If it's larger, it's going to kind of guess. It's assuming that I'm going from that upper left-hand corner as I carry over. If I had, let's say, kind of look on this guy here. Let's say I select this one. It's going to be white text, so that's going to be a little silly. Let's try for something really different. I've got a button here, Explore Films. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. Come on over. Now, one of the rules that we just went with is if an artboard is not in view, even if you select it, we're not going to paste on it. So if I come through and select all of these artboards, yeah, and I move my view so that I can't see the artboard, let's try that again. Select all these guys and move it so that one artboard is out of view. If I come in and say paste, it's going to paste that button for me. Didn't paste it on the last one, even though I had it selected. We just made a decision that you wouldn't want to accidentally select every artboard if you had thousands of artboards in your design and paste an item on even artboards that you couldn't see. So the rule with this paste to other artboards in the same X and Y location is going to assume that all of the ones you're pasting on are visible in the screen. All right, we're at about a little bit half past the hour. What I'm going to probably do, let's go ahead and look at my agenda a little bit, although I didn't stick to it all that much, at least swinging back there. We talked about multiple artboards and copy paste. We didn't talk about paste attributes. So that's kind of interesting. If you come on in and you select something that you do like, you can paste your attributes to a different object. So let's say, pretty simple example, if I have a rectangle shape here and I have certain attributes associated with it, so a fill, I give it a lovely looking shadow that's pretty subtle here, and I have an entirely different object. I can have that other object and just copy my content here. So if I say copy, when I select the other object and paste appearance, it's going to carry over all those attributes. This is true with typography, with things like a background blur. Many of the properties that you see here on the right will carry over even if it's a very different object. So this allows you to quickly apply attributes on more than one object. All right, with that, I think we're going to go ahead and close out this session. Keep your eye open for follow-on sessions. As I mentioned, I have a YouTube page, and on that YouTube page are what's new topics for XD. So for the past 4 months, all of the launch videos, all the new feature videos from our blog are there. In addition to that, we're going to have these sessions. So I'm going to record them, keep them around. If you have any feedback for me, throw it in the chat here for the last couple minutes. If not, I hope to see you here on this station again soon. I'm going to give it just a couple seconds, and we'll close it out. Thanks for your time, everyone.